Becky, thank you so much for being here today with us.
My absolute pleasure.
I mean, you're one of the most well-known, celebrated agents in the whole of London, queen of the luxury space. Thank you for hosting us in this beautiful house, this £25 million listing of yours in the heart of Belgravia in Chester Square.
It's an incredible, quintessential London square, and this is an incredible house that's been refurbished by my clients, and it's actually one of my favourite listings. I cannot wait to show you around. This is where the magic happens. Look at this space.
This is insane.
It goes across the whole lower level. And you're going to like this, Simon. It's an incredible little cave wine cellar.
Oh my
that.
word.
No one can deny the importance of wellness, and this whole section is complete wellness.
It's literally like a miniature hotel and spa.
It's like a boutique spa,
Yeah,
right? It's
it
incredible.
is.
And down here you've got the cinema room. Get ready to put your feet up.
Oh my word.
Have a seat.
Wow. Okay, this would work. Okay, what are we watching?
And action.
Your reputation in the sector is second to none. You're probably the most celebrated agent out there.
Blushing.
Blushing. It's well deserved. Your accolades are, everyone knows how successful you are. You've won countless awards. You transacted on billions of pounds worth of real estate. I'm just interested, how did you get into that?
So I've always been a salesperson from birth. I've always been negotiating my parents. I've negotiated my way through life. I fell into telesales after school, and I saw an advert in a paper because we had no social media at the time, and it said, do you want to earn £400 a day? And I just rang up and said yes. So it was, there wasn't a mobile. You left a voicemail on an answering machine. Someone called you back and they said, do you want to make money? Meet us on Tottenham Court Road in this office. So it was like a boiling room kind of scenario. I walked in, I think I was 19 or 20, I'd finished my degree. And it was just this room full of phones and everyone was standing up and it was just outgoing calls. So I was averaging about 400 calls a day. And we were pitching advertising space in a hotel publication. So the magazines that are in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And they would intercept the calls and they would listen to you and you weren't allowed to sit down. You literally had a 15-minute break, and I spent my whole day making outgoing calls. In 2 weeks, I was their top biller. And at the time, I had been interviewing for Foxtons. I wanted to be a receptionist. So I tried to be a receptionist, and the lady at HR there said no. I interviewed 3 times. She kept saying no. And then I decided to phone the head of Foxtons, Peter Rollings at the time, and sell him some advertising space in the magazine because he was in my little black book of contacts. And to cut long story short, he said, look, stop the spiel, because we had a script.
Yeah.
I want you to come and work for me. I said, well, I've been trying to work for you and the woman in HR won't give me a job. And he said, no, come and meet me. And then the rest is history.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. He never bought the advertising space though.
Oh, really?
So
You should bill him now.
I should bill him now.
Okay, so Foxtons was obviously a kind of major part of your life, and I just want to take us through the journey of becoming their best and top agent.
So I think I joined Foxtons in 98 or 99. I finished my degree in 98. And at that time, John Hunt was this incredible visionary, who still is an incredible visionary.
Absolutely.
And he felt that the London market needed more dynamism. Dynamism? That's what we get, dynamism. And he felt that he wanted to disrupt the agency structure in the UK. So he literally fly posted through all of the houses in Notting Hill. And at the time we had a Park Lane office, a South Kent office and a Notting Hill office. That was it. And there were 50 brokers at the time. And it was just ruthless. It was, here's your phone. We didn't have mobiles at that early stage. We had to get our targets to get mobiles. Here's your phone, here's your box of contacts, and flick through it and sell. But I had the beauty of being in the Mayfair office. So at that time, we were able to sell in Notting Hill, in Belgravia, South Kensington. So I got to know the majority of London because we were able to. But it was myself and a lady called Linda Bartley, who was quite senior, and the rest were all men. So it was difficult, and I was the youngest. And the second day of me starting the job, my boss at the time, who was very handsome, Tom Grogan, actually said, well done, Becky, I'm actually leaving, so you'll be heading up the office.
Wow.
But the thing to remember about this is I came from telesales. So I was making outgoing calls, averaging 400 calls a day. And then I get put in this place where people are calling me to spend money. And I was like, this is amazing. So for me, it was just all about mindset and the perception of the position I was in, because I came in and everyone was moaning and they were saying, the market wasn't great. And for me, I was like, guys, you crazy. There's people calling you to spend millions here. I was trying to sell advertising space for 10K. So I did very well. And also my father was a pilot, and a lot of our clients were multinational and global. So I was able to navigate how to work with different type of cultures. And I think that held
That's important.
strong. Yeah. And I love John Hunt. When you appreciate who you work for, you work harder.
And being a woman, sort of in that, one of two women in that company, did you feel singled out? Did you feel that there were barriers to your progression?
I think I only reflect on it now, at looking at the barriers. At the time, I was just hungry, and I didn't look at the room and think, oh, it's just me and there's a whole load of men. I just thought, there's money, and how do I get to that money? And I was in my 20s, quite attractive, and I could blend into every room. I have privilege, so I could walk into an Italian room, a Persian room, an African room, and pretty much navigate. And I speak 5 languages, so that was a benefit as well. I was surrounded by the best of the best. The people in the industry now all came from that Foxtons kind of MVP, most valued player era, as you know.
It's the best training, wasn't it?
The best training ever. Yeah. And we are now all at the top of our career ladder. So I think that's what I visioned. But going back to the point that you asked, I didn't see it at the time. I felt it as I got later in life, and I suddenly realized. I felt it when it was promotions, when I realized that I was getting paid less. It was when I started investigating that I noticed the difference.
And if you were speaking now to young women looking to come into real estate, what advice would you give them?
Advice I'd give to young women stepping into real estate now is it's very important to be mindful of the fact that you are a woman, but don't use that as a hindrance. Just be professional and be very savvy on what your pay should be as a person in that field. So in the same field as legals, as in real estate, if I'm a broker in the super prime market, what should I be earning? And ask people. And if you're going through a recruitment company, ask them to give you the stats, the figures of what you should be earning. So I think it's important to remember the strength of a woman, because it definitely is something that we should be very proud of, much better multitaskers. But I think that be mindful of professionalism is key, and do your research. I'm a big believer that if you feel uncomfortable, whatever you are, a woman, black, white, Jewish, Indian, whatever you are and what you identify as, if at any point, if you're in an atmosphere that makes you feel uncomfortable, go through the professional channels and voice it. It's not the easiest thing to do, but make your voice heard, always by email, always in a professional way. And that's what I've always done. And it's, I believe, strengthened a lot of people coming in after me and made a lot of companies know that they had to, get their stuff together and make sure that everyone was being paid accordingly. Even when I ran my own company and I became an entrepreneur, which you and I have had many discussions about, it's very important to be mindful of your team because the greatest staff very rarely ask for pay rises. They just want accolades and they just want to know that they're noticed. And the best way to do that is to actually approach the staff member and say, actually, I don't think you're being paid enough because the recruitment costs far outweigh that extra 5K. So I think when you start looking again and doing research as an employer as well, that's imperative.
So some people might say that you were crazy to leave Foxtons in around 2011 at the height of your success there, to go on to found your own agency, Rockstone. Tell us about that. Tell us about the decision to leave and to become an entrepreneur.
So I don't think it was really a decision. I think I'm allowed to talk about this. I think I was semi-pushed out because John Hunt, who was the owner of the company, who I adored, sold to BCC Partners for one of the biggest transactions, 380 million at the time, the day before the disaster of banking, I think it was 2008. And after that, the company became very corporate. And I was expected to do everything in the same way as everyone else. So we became very vanilla. And I felt that the super prime market was really blossoming and there wasn't a kind of private family office feel to it. You had Savills and Knight Frank and you had them cornering the market. And you had maybe 1 or 2 small boutique agents, Beecham Estates, but there wasn't anyone really doing it and there wasn't a woman doing it. So I approached them and said, look, can we do this? Our fees are too high for that time at that time. And we don't have a presence in that market. We cap out at 3 to 4 million. And they said, well, that's our model. And I said, yeah, but the super prime market is happening. The Candies were developing One Hyde Park, branded residences were coming in and London London was a global hotspot, and they didn't listen. So I was then asked to start selling studios in King's Cross, which was fine, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do after an 11-year career. And I felt that they didn't see my talent and use it. So I was asked to come to the office, and I said, well, they said, how are you? I said, I'm really tired. I was thinking, could I have a year off? It's been 11 years of working.
Yeah.
After my mum and dad died, I was back at work the day after on both situations, and I had never taken a break. There were trading hours, like 8 in the morning till 9 at night. I was working 7-day weeks. I was burnt out. And they said, well, we were actually thinking of you leaving.
Oh, wow.
And I went, well, no, it doesn't work that way. And I actually rang a friend of mine and said, you know, what do I do? And he said, leave. He said, just leave, you're unhappy. And I was driving a Porsche at the time, and I was just living my best life. And I went back in and I said, well, this is what we're going to do. My lawyers will contact you tomorrow. And I instructed another law firm, and we agreed something which allowed me to leave without a fuss. Yes.
And so the birth of Rockstone.
The birth of Rockstone. So I had a non-compete, and even though we tried to get rid of the non-compete, I was told that I couldn't work for 8 months. My non-compete at that time was a year.
Wow.
So I just morally thought, okay, what am I going to do? So I set up an events company, and that was called Rockstone Entertainment.
Okay.
And I started doing events very well. I went to Monaco, I went to Russia, I went to Egypt, and I did these huge events. And then I came back, and I had an answer phone machine on my house phone, oddly, from a lady called Caroline Issa, and she was a publisher at Tank magazine. And she said, Becky, I've been calling Foxtons, you know, I wanted you to find me a house. We met once at a party. Could you act for me and find me a house? I said, absolutely. I rang her back and I said, I can be your buying agent. I had no clue what it was. She said, what's your fees? I said, 1%. I said, what's your budget? She said, 500K. So it was the service she got for my 5K fee, honestly, was probably the best service that anyone has ever had in their life. And I found her a flat. I think I showed her about 55 properties.
Wow.
And spent $5,000 on printer ink and made no money. But from her, I was then referred to another client. And that's how Rockstone started, in my front room.
Interested to talk about, just touch on something you mentioned earlier. I want to explore mentors in your life and how important you feel they are.
So John Hunt, who I talk about a lot, is still my mentor to this day. So we meet every couple of months for a cup of tea, and I offload and to get his guidance as he's still working. Mentors are really important, and I now run a charity called Shadow to Shine, and we mentor predominantly young Black adults. And that's been going 5 years. It's the anniversary this year, and we've mentored over 600 young adults, and we have over 600 mentors now. But I felt that was such a necessity because John became my mentor later, but at the time, and leaving home at 15, I had no one to help me navigate. And at the time, you had Citizens Advice Bureau, you had YTS, but you didn't really have, you know, anyone to go to. And I had very strict Iranian parents that didn't want to talk about anything apart from grades and when I was going to be a doctor, lawyer, or, you know, brain surgeon. So for me, I felt that I always went to John, and my advice is always go to the top. So from my first day, I would call John on anything, minor or major. I wanted to create a bridge between young adults and the specialists in the fields that they were wanting to specialize in. And that's how Shadow to Shine started. So I have a mentor. I now mentor 3 young adults, 2 of which are full-time working. One who's a fashion designer who did the most incredible show at the Tate, which sold out. It's really important to me to pass that flame to someone else and make sure that the industry takes accountability as well.
So many would say that you've achieved the ultimate in entrepreneurship, which is exiting from your business and merging with a top international brand, Sotheby's. How did you know that it was the right time to do that?
Well, you've been so flattering in this interview, but I will say a lot of life is down to luck. So, you know, I think John Hunt is a testament to that, you know, signing a contract the day before Goldman collapses. And so there is a lot of luck involved, and you have to have faith that luck will come your way, and sometimes bad luck will come your way. Yeah. We actually, the Rockstone team, me and the team, traded at a profit for 13 years, which is probably one of my biggest achievements. And
it's incredible.
And I voice this and I voice this a lot. You know, the government doesn't support SMEs, and I think SMEs make up something like 30 or 40% of the GDP. So, you know, I'm not an economist, so if I'm getting this wrong, but I know that SMEs make up a lot of the UK money, and we're not supported. And at COVID, I wasn't supported in the way that I should have been. And actually, had to take our insurers to court for the lack of COVID support. A whole group of us came together as businesses and took Hiscox to court. And yes, I had insurance, but then I had to take them to court. So it's all of these hurdles that people don't talk to you about, and very few SMEs are supported in the right way. And that's another thing that I want to do. At the time, I was just very tired of running a business, and I was about to close up shop, to be quite frank. It's the first time I've actually said that. And then by luck, I went to see this £37 million building with Simon Burgoyne as one of my team. Yeah. So at the time, Simon Burgoyne was at Knight Frank. He'd been headhunted by George Azar and actually had sold George his house or helped him look for a house. And there was a big recruitment drive, and I wasn't part of that recruitment, group. And Simon called George and said, "You need to buy her company." And we did a Zoom. And I realized that he was as crazy as me, and he was an incredible disruptor. And he said, "Name your price." I did. We negotiated. And then I said, "No problem, but we're going to do this in Dubai, and I'm going to bring my lawyer."
She did say that.
Yes. And he said, "You don't need a lawyer." And I went, "Oh, no, I need my lawyer." And the best advice I would give to anyone is get a good lawyer, like Simon Jurowicz, who now actually, shameless plug, but say you actually govern over all of my life decisions and in every capacity. So whether it's my family, my son, and one thing I will say is you have 100% of a company. I would say 30% of that should be split between legals and accountancy. And if you look at that kind of projection, if you're not doing that, you're going to come unstuck at some point. But you very kindly and brilliantly brokered an incredible deal for me that was good for George and good for me. And I think that was important.
You mentioned before luck, and I think you're being modest because I think you make your own luck. I think we all do. I think it's where preparation meets timing. And ultimately, you've got to be in the right place at the right time. But You've got to have the right mindset to then take advantage of the opportunities.
Yeah.
What I want to explore with you is what traits do you think you have and that you rely on most to get to where you are today? Like what has helped you make your luck?
I think you're right, and I think there is an element of luck, and I think, as you've very pointed out, which is a very valid point, is it's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of durability. I think the most important things for me is never accepting no, which, as you know, Simon, dealing with my screaming emotional outbursts, and when you're trying to keep me level-headed and trying to give me the easy, no-stress way to a solution, I am always steadfast in my gut feeling. And if I feel that that's the way it should be, I will make a point of researching, maybe not always researching, but going with my gut. So I think it's tenacity, I think it's conviction, and I think it's being absolutely unapologetic. And I think another thing is surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And then you will always be uplifted, but also do it on your own terms. I think that's the thing that has held me strong. So the worst times when I've thought you made the worst decision and everybody hates you, it's come back around. And by the way, the accolades that you spoke about at the beginning of this lovely conversation have taken me just under 30 years to get to. Yeah. So I think, yes, there's luck, but I think actually now sitting here and talking to you about it, it's 30 years, and it's probably 60 years because I haven't slept.
Yeah, and it's consistency. It's
consistency and just picking yourself up every time. You graze your knees, you get beaten, you get battered, but just that picking up and having people around you that, how many times do I offload with you a week and it's not even about work? And having that time and making that commitment to yourself.
So I think people in your life, it's incredibly important about who you surround yourself with. Yeah. And that takes us on to sort of network as well, because I think that's critical. Yeah. I think probably for both of us. Yeah. Tell us about how you build yours.
Well, net worth is your net work, right? Net worth is your net worth. That's what they've said, and it's very, very true. So, I work tirelessly as a single mum to put my son in a private school, and half the reason I do that is because I believe that's the best environment for him to progress education-wise, but also with the people that he'll be going to school with. And at a very young age, my mother worked tirelessly as also a single mum with multiple sclerosis. And I actually got a scholarship to Putney Park. She taught me how to speak English, and education was always just so important. And mum wanted to put, little immigrant Becky in those surroundings. And we came to the UK with that dream. We are immigrants. We came here with nothing, having survived a revolution, having half of our family killed and everything taken away from us, to come here and be in where is considered, and I still strongly believe in this, the UK is still one of the most important global positions for education, type of life, and a melting pot of history and legacy and heritage. And I'm so blessed that I was able to to be educated here. But more importantly, you know, I put myself, as you pointed out earlier, in every situation. I've cleaned toilets, any job that came up, I was just hungry for. And I think immigrants tend to do that, right? Because where you're coming from is so bad that you're just going to do anything you can to not go back there again. Absolutely. Because being a woman in Iran right now is not where I want to be.
So Becky, just touching on something we were talking about before about Sotheby's and about sort of the global nature of your business. Tell us a bit about that and about trends that you're seeing within the ultra prime market.
So George Azar obviously was a key positioning of where I wanted to move, but the brand, Sotheby's is a global brand, so shamelessly to plug, but we're in 84 countries, over 26,000 brokers and over 1,150 offices. And unlike most other real estate firms, we are a true global operator. So I can call Mai, who heads up Miami and heads up over 1,100 brokers, and say, I've got someone coming into this part of Florida, this part, they want Fisher Island, and she'll have a Becky in that position, which gives me an octopus position, right? I've got 8 arms everywhere now globally. We cannot ignore the fact that all clients now are living very differently. So when I started this just under 30 years ago, you came to London for education and you lived in London. You might be in Monaco. You were definitely not in the Middle East at that time. That now, 30 years later, has completely transformed. London, whereas historically would have been 90% pole position of time spent, you're probably now down by 60% to about 30% of your time spent there, or tax-wise, 300 days or 180 days or 90 days. So I've realized that people only want to deal with one person, as you do, because a lot of my clients, which are your clients as well, as we do so much together, now are saying, you know, Simon, come fly to south of France, fly to Abu Dhabi. And in the last 2 weeks, I've flown to 3 or 4 different countries on behalf of clients who've said, right, you found for me in London, I've got a building in Milan, could you come and look at it? In 2 weeks, I'm looking at a £100 million house in the south of France. But I will then JV with the south of France specialist, but the client will want that family office expertise. So in the way that there was an incredible guy called David Forbes many years ago who truly inspired me, and he was a true global agent. So he spent 300 days a year on a plane, and he would act as the advisory, and he's still spoken about in great respect. And that's really who I'm looking up to and wanting to be.
So private capital really has gone global.
Yeah.
And just in terms of London, between sort of when you started and where you see it today, you've talked about a few of the different things happening there. Is London still a place for private capital and investing?
I've fallen back in love with London. I don't know, it's because spring has come and London shines in spring, but you cannot not love London. And having spent the last 3 weeks in the Middle East, which is unbelievable. You know, Dubai is 42 years old, Abu Dhabi is 53 years old. I mean, what a utopia. You go there and, you know, you have no issues. Your phone's not stolen. You know, you can wear all your watches, and everything. But you don't have, you know, 500 million years of history. You know, you don't have, you know, the Globe, you don't have the Tate, it's getting there. But there is something about the vibe in London that you just can't ignore. And more now I'm traveling globally, I'm actually seeing more and more that globally there's only 5 or 6 positions that people will actually have an investment in. So, you know, if we're looking at the Middle East, it's going to be Dubai, Abu Dhabi, now Saudi soon. And then you're coming to Europe, it's now Milan, Monaco, Portugal, and the UK, I would say still. So in America, New York's back again. And, you know, LA not so much because of the fires that we've just had. So there's very few positions, and Singapore's so far. So if you think about globally, there's only 5 or 6 positions. London is still there. The government does need to sort out what it's doing, and I'm very unimpressed by what Labour has done. And I'm quite happy to say that vocally.
And from what I've seen, the wealthy who are leaving are not selling their properties.
No. So we're in a period of stagnation at the moment. So in the last 2 weeks, I've been focusing on getting my pricing down by 20%.
That's interesting.
And people might look at that as the market crashing, and the headlines will say, you know, property sells for 30 to 40%, but it's very difficult to actually stabilise a market price this correctly, because it depends which way the wind's blowing and what the temperament's for. So last year, the buzzwords are branded residence, lateral apartments, new builds. Now the planning restrictions have changed here. You cannot continue to build those. So what happens is those become Picassos. They become more and more desired, and more people want the same thing. So what happens? Those values go skyrocket, but then I've got a Georgian house with no lift on 6 floors, where historically someone would have come in Notting Hill and bought that, or Kensington for their kids and going to school. They're now not here anymore.
Yeah.
So what happens to that house? And that's where the pricing gets affected. So you have these micro pricing markets,
Of course.
and these headlines don't help us because everyone is
No, the newspapers are not helping.
and also other estate agents, other brokers who overvalue properties and drop their fees. It's just ridiculous. You're setting expectations for a client so high that they could be sitting there and losing 20% on the value of their property because you're trying to get a listing. It's bad business. I turn away maybe 30% of business annually because my pricing is not where the client wants it to be. But usually I would say 15% of that comes back to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're seeing a lot of Americans as well now.
Yes.
With strong dollars.
So strong dollars, weakness of the pound, and also where they want to be. And I think that the UK is still a safe haven in some capacity. So yes, we do have that. A lot of Asian buyers coming over at the moment and European buyers. But going back to your point, are people selling? No, because it's probably not the right time to sell. So my advice is if you can, rent out your property. But because of Labour's taxation position, it doesn't allow our clients to rent out their properties because 50% practically of the rent is going back to the government. So what do clients do? Leave their homes empty, which is not solving the problem which they wanted to solve, which is there's no lights on at night. Well, guess what? There's more no lights on now.
So Becky, we touched on sort of globalization of wealth and private capital. Another thing I'm quite interested to hear from you about is this transition of wealth, intergenerational transition of wealth that's coming. I think something like $18.4 trillion is due to pass over from the one generation to another by 2030. Are you seeing that come through in your listings and in terms of who's coming to talk to you about buying real estate?
100%. I mean, you've got issues with taxation and what happens when you're selling your property, and people have never been more focused. So as you know, I always give you a referral on the real estate side, but my referrals predominantly now are, Simon, could you get tax advisors in? Could you get immigration advisors in? Family law is a big thing now. So I need someone, and they need me to be that one-stop shop. And people are very much looking at their global portfolio, the tax positions of should we be selling now? How do we structure it as a trust structure? What are we going to do to make sure that we're not giving away the majority of what we've worked so hard for? So our parents and our generation are hard workers, not saying that the new generation isn't, but our emphasis was very much, work super, super hard, save, save, save. A lot of the younger generation that I'm employing and some of the younger, amazing kind of new wealth, the YouTubers, these incredible creatives that are earning so much money, are not so mindful of putting it all in the bank and just watching the interest grow. They're living their best lives. And
Content.
so they're just living on their terms. And I think that's the difference. You've got that amount actually sounds true to me because it's the savers of our generation and our parents who've now passed that on. Where are they spending that money? They're spending it wisely, but they are spending it internationally. So our Dubai office is getting a lot of that new money and a lot of that generational wealth because they're looking for the maximum return.
Are they buying different assets?
They're buying bread and butter, is what I call it, which I don't mean that rudely and I don't want to sound here arrogantly. The bread and butter of the super prime term is kind of 2 million plus. So the market of 2 million to 6 million is absolutely flying. I mean, we're Q1 2025, just to make reference if people are watching this later. But the biggest market for us right now is Southwest, first-time buyers, husbands and wives with young kids or parents buying for their young families, and they want freehold houses, gardens, or apartments in good buildings that are going to rent well. Our rental yields are not as good as they used to be, but I think freehold is what people want, and they just want it to be a solid investment. So that market is flying at the moment.
Thanks, Becky. We've recently read that you're setting up the private buying arm for Sotheby's. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, it's now set up. We've actually done, as you know, Simon, because you act for those clients, and there was a need to set up this department, especially with our American buyers coming over, because that's what they're accustomed to. We'll probably do about 7 or 8 selected private client searches a year. These are repeat clients predominantly who we've housed before and who want us to navigate and negotiate for them, because we are in a great market where you can actually be buying a really good deal at the moment, and I think we're actually slightly past that. So sale preview is finished. We're now in the sale, and I think if you've got someone who's experienced and knowing, but more importantly, our private buying arm brings in my contacts like you. clients can call you and use your services, but I'm sure when I call you, you will make my clients a priority. And I have a very tight team. You're my go-to on the legal side, obviously, tried and tested. And there's another firm that I use, just in case someone wants another opinion, but there's only 5 or 6 of my team. So surveyors, solicitors, house movers, that I use, that I've tried and tested, that I will then give my private clients access to. I work with a very good lady who helps clients find spaces in schools if required. So we pretty much service all requirements. But that is something that we're seeing growing, and it's a department that is very much in demand.
That makes a lot of sense, and it sort of rings true with what we're seeing as well in the market, and clients wanting a more holistic experience when it comes to who their advisors are. And we only recommend people that we know are going to deliver the same type of service that we deliver. We all have clients in this private capital space who expect the best 24/7 delivery, constant attention, and the very best advisors and the very best service.
I think globally we're working in different time zones, right? So now we're global, it's great, but not, when I'm speaking to the client in LA as I did last night. And then so we're both sleeping less, I think, because we
are definitely sleeping less.
We used to speak at 9. Now we speak at 5, 6, or I'm speaking to you at 11. So that's one thing to navigate. And also people's patience everything is so quick. And now with ChatGPT and AI, everything is so much quicker. But our time is far more measured because we're now speaking to so many more advisors. So, you and I both know historically it would be quite a simple transaction. Now we're speaking to a trust here and, family advisors and, there's so many more people involved and that takes more conversations. And with the price changing, those are hard conversations to have. So those conversations are taking even longer. And then you've got the issue with other agents coming in with their stupid opinions. There's only 5 or 10 agents that I respect in the London market, and I will say that quite openly, that have actually earned their stripes because they've tried and tested and sold properties. And that's not a huge number of people to rely on. But you'd hope that the client should be navigated to who those best people are. My father used to say, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a heartbeat to lose it. Yeah. So if you refer me a client and I mess that up, all the work that you'd put in and vice versa is just cancelled.
We're definitely working harder, faster, stronger.
100%, yeah. And getting older. So, supplements are important and stretching is important and, menopause kicks in and it's all these things. Client doesn't care whether you've got menopause or not. Client doesn't care if, one of your kids has got flu or, you've got to get to paddle. They don't care. It's just these things that we're navigating. We've got to just be there. And if it's not you, it's someone else that's going to be there, right? Because it's competitive. And
that's it, isn't it?
Top end.
I always say to my team, if you don't answer the call, someone else is going to take it. So, Becky, you mentioned that you're 49, looking fabulous, and still fighting and still succeeding in everything you do. What is the most important thing for you now?
I think the most important things for me now is working on my terms, working for the good of me and my health and my sanity. My mental health is really important, and the mental health of my team, and making sure that I'm there for my son and not missing those key moments. As you and I both know, we spend quality time with our children in the best way we can, relying on people, and when I'm not okay, speaking up. Working on the charity, Shadow to Shine, is so important to me, and I want that to roll out across the UK and globally. We've actually built an employability program which clients can take on, and will be coming to Fladgate to assist us, which you very kindly offered, and we're going to take up now, because there is a lot of the next generation that I would like to become lawyers, and I would like to be in a position which gives them strength to battle the things that they're passionate about. So yes, it's really, social responsibility is a big key driver for me. And my legacy, what I'm here to be remembered for, yes, being ruthless and successful, but also, that legacy for me is about being Persian, it's about being woman, it's about being a refugee, it's about being super hardworking, it's about doing the right thing when I can and speaking up to have that voice, which at the moment for women in Iran, my voice is more important than anything. Yeah. And I get messages every now and then saying, I'm there and it's hell, and seeing that you're there and, you're a flame for us means a lot to me. So yeah, those are the most important things for my next chapter. And to launch the biggest, creative platform that has ever been.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you've conquered real estate.
Yes.
You conquered social responsibility.
Yeah.
And now you've turned your attention to becoming a tech founder in your spare time.
In my spare time, as you do, yeah. As you know, I like to disrupt, and I look around tech and everyone is white and male, no disrespect. But I did see that tech needed some disruption. And, LinkedIn is a great platform, and there are other platforms that work very well. But I noticed a gap in the market, especially for creatives. So a lot of the shadowed shine mentees are young creatives. The energy around being young creatives, especially in London, is infectious and incredible, and it's something that I was drawn to like moth to a flame.
Right.
And I realized that the most creative don't really have the most business sense. So
Yeah.
and this younger generation don't have communities. They don't, you and I used to go for we still do, we go for coffees, we're very face to face, pick up the phone. This newer generation is very much, everything is just there. Now we're talking about robots coming into your home, and you can AI a digital campaign, and graphic designers are not needed. And you've got artisans. So sitting in a property like this, we've got joiners, we've got mosaic people that spend hours putting gold gilt. And I want there to be a creative platform which shines their talent, like the film crew here. I want to know more about the film crew here and what they do. So I have built a platform called Black Book by Roxia. Roxy is the company, and Black Book comes from my Black Book of contacts from working in fashion, music and entertainment, and now real estate. And it's having a search engine which allows me to filter in an efficient way, but is built for creatives to have video compression at a much better rate and better visuals. And LinkedIn is very corporate. So 70% of people on LinkedIn earn 70K and above. So what is happening to that 30% is what I want to know.
And you're here to answer that question.
Yes, and Black Book is launching in 2 weeks.
Amazing.
Finally, yes.
We'll all be downloading it. Becky, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it this much. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's really nice just to have a bit of time to actually catch up with you and talk about the past, because you and I just focus on the future. So,
I know. Well, it's been 15 years, and here's to the next 15.
Here's to the next 15 years.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.